forward, follow me. If I hesitate, push me. If I may kill me, avenge me. If I am a traitor, kill me.
Gangsters, cops, and politicians, get ready to rock. We're on a mission. Each one of us shares our own vision. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. While I patrolled the streets, all the G's on me. When I was on the yard, I went real hard. While I patrolled the streets, all the G's on me.
Saludos, it's your host, Gabe Morales. As you can tell by today's thumbnail, we are going to discuss the Northern Structure, also known as Nuestra Raza. More specifically, we are going to get into detail on their bylaws, known as the XIV Bonds. In the recent NF Constitution video, I covered that organization's history and evolution. Much of that information and this information on the NS/NR are included in my book, The History of the Nuestra Familia. After the late 1970s CDC and BOP validation systems were implemented, and after the early 1980s RICO case against the Nuestra Familia that decimated their ranks or resulted in all known remaining members being slammed down in the security housing units, the NF created a farm team of sorts, which was the NS/NR. Now, I've heard some people claim that Babo Sosa started the idea of a Northern Structure in the late 1970s, but in all of the hundreds of C-files I've read on Nuestra Familia and Northern Structure, there is no mention of this. Babo did create 14 rules of the Familiano Guerrero, with Guerrero, which means warrior, misspelled, but that was a different cause. That was a guideline for NF soldados, not a new format or substructure of the NF. I have seen some reports that a new group called Nuestra Cosa might be implemented, which I believe was an initial idea of Danilo Baby Melendez of Los Siete fame, which was a major case in San Francisco whereby 7 Latino suspects are said to have killed a cop. Supposedly, high-ranking Captain Art the Rock Beltran was considered to lead it, but that idea went nowhere. Melendez was killed in 1977 by the NF, and Beltran soon dropped out. Babo Sosa's brother, Michael, a.k.a. Manos, was considered to be a lieutenant in the NF and, surprisingly, stayed with the Black Bob Vasquez faction, which was adversaries of his own brother. And Manos is rumored to have supported and later assisted in distributing the bonds, but he dropped out as soon as the opportunity presented itself. I have read numerous C-files and have lots of documentation that the XIV bonds, which were the foundation of the Northern Structure, as CDC called it, whereby copies of the bonds were first discovered at Old Folsom. It was obvious to CDC staff that this new organization was very structured, thus the name Northern Structure. But it was called Nuestra Raza by participants or believers in the Northern cause, aka La Causa. At that time, most of the NF leadership, including Black Bob Vasquez, were locked down in the security housing unit, also known as the SHU, at Old Folsom, except for a few NF leaders like the Gabriel brothers, who remained at DVI and Tracy. Because their organization was being slammed down and scrutinized, they had to come up with an idea to guide younger Norteños entering the California Youth Authority and CDC adult system to recruit new NF to bolster their ranks because their numbers had become greatly diminished. According to everything I have read in C-files or have heard from dropouts, the bonds were drafted, approved, and formatted in Old Folsom towards the end of 1983 by Corny Tristan and a few others, and sent out to general population during January 1984 via Dancing Bear Villamontes and Skip Villanueva by young Norteños who were looking for a belief system and seeking guidance on how to survive on yards where they were greatly outnumbered by Sureños. But curiously, in all of my time working at New Folsom, doing unclothed body searches of Norteños, doing cell searches, looking through their personal property, drawings, photos, and other functions I conducted as a corrections officer, I never once recall seeing any NR tats or drawings. All I ever saw was lots of XIV tats and art, Vida del Norte, etc. Many documents I have seen cite January 22nd, 1984 as the NR anniversary date, when Brad Paulo Prigley de Sacra, the Meadowview area, very close to where I lived to be exact, was killed at New Folsom. But this would have been impossible, as New Folsom was not even built yet in 1984. I should know, I helped open it up in 1987 as a brand new fish cop right out of the CDC Galt Academy. The actual death of Brad Paulo Prigley, CDC number D, is in Delta 11169, happened on January 22nd, 1989. What did happen is, in 1984, Black Bob Vasquez paroled from CDC and later moved to Arizona. He still kept in touch with his old friend Brown Bob and kept tabs on the NF, often paying personal visits to them and tracking the cops too. In fact, I have documents where the NF is talking about, we're riding a 14-seat RV, meaning Robert Vasquez. I have a theory that I cannot prove, but one that leads credence to my observations on why the NR became stronger after 1993. In the summer of 1992, the second NF RICO officially started. 21 Nuestra Familia members were indicted by a Santa Clara County grand jury, which caused some of them to be sent to the feds, some to return to being locked down in Corcoran or Pelican Bay, and some were even sent to death row. As you recall, Babo Sosa and Death Row Joe were indicted on the first RICO, which decimated the ranks. The second RICO resulted in even more NF either dropping out and debriefing or forcing them to go even more underground than they already were. But towards the end of my career at New Folsom in post-1993, I did see lots of NR tats, drawings, etc. Here are some Nuestra Raza tats and drawings I did later observe. As seen in this confiscated huila, or document, or filter to Nuestra Raza followers, I believe the reason that the NR blew up in 1993 was because of this filter, which states that the NR went into a new mode, dealing with street functions, as well as backdating their anniversary date to January 22nd, 1984. As you recall, Brad Paulo Prigley de Sacra was killed on January 22nd, 1989. It was in 1993 that this drawing you see was made, although the huila states that the Nuestra was on top of the eagle and the Raza below the sombrero. So as you can see, it was altered again. It states that the eagle was grasping a pedazo in his beak, which is a shank or knife, signifying the blood that was spilled. In one claw is grasping a libro or a book, the 14 bonds or laws of the NR. And in the other talon was a sombrero, signifying the Nuestra Familia forefathers, the organization that started the NR. As you recall, the official NF logo was a sombrero with a machete and blood dripping off of it. Another huila stated that the NR went further revision when the high command structure was put in place. This consisted of NR Council and the NR Administration. It also mentions the Chain of Command, COC, and the CAT system, as well as protocols for recruitment into the NR and a time serve frame before a brother or hermano could be pulled towards and inducted into the Nuestra Familia. And it also mentions the 7 steps, officially named the 7 phases, such as doing evaluations of the enemy, doing background checks on their own people and enemies, trying to figure out the strengths and weaknesses of their enemies. They're often given assignments or missions, sometimes called pegadas, where they had to go out and do hits. They had to learn the chain of command, which, like I said, was based on the CAT system. They often had to write essays. These often involved topics such as duties and expectations, distractions and diversions, discipline and control, and long-time goals in regards to things such as building a regiment, gathering manpower, and schooling youngsters. They had to learn who their channel was. In other words, security dictated that they only speak to certain individuals when they were conducting NR biz. They also sent out huilas on directives in what was going on as far as filing frequent reports, and were often sent filters from higher echelon NR and NF. Almost everything they were supposed to do were covered in the bonds, which I'll read off here shortly. They were schooled that the NF were referred to as carnales, whereby the NS/NR were called hermanos or bros, short for brothers. In addition to the bonds, all of the NS/NR were classified into different categories, or CATs. Cat 1 was a soldier, Cat 2 was a squad leader/teacher or maestro, and Cat 3 were undercover NF, which there were very few of because the NF had to be very selective, that authorities were not putting informants to infiltrate their ranks. These Cat 3s controlled the Northern Structure or the NS/NR regimental security departments. And this NS-NR movement spread a lot better after being established for about 10 years. Both the NF and NS/NR were known for taking detailed notes on allies, enemies, and officers. Heck, sometimes I think they had better logbooks than we did. They were also known to wear identifying symbols, stars for hits, huelga birds for doing hits on sureños. These tattoos were supposed to be earned, but not always. Prospective members had to prove themselves worthy and were put on probation and had to undergo strict training under the 14 Bonds. They also had to read books like The Art of War and Machiavelli. During the late 80s to early 90s, I did notice that Norteños were operating in squads of 2 to 3 individuals all over the yard, and that they often grouped up and met with others from their hometown city and counties. These were known as cars, such as the Sacramento car, Stockton car, the Modesto car, the San Juan car, and the Salas car from Salinas, as well as other areas. Now, I remember when old-timer guards from Old Folsom would come in to work overtime at New Folsom, it would often say that La M owned Folsom. In other words, they ran it, and stated that the NF would never gain a foothold, as the MA would never allow that to happen. Well, they were wrong. The NF and Northern Structure took over CR around 1988. I should know. I wrote the main report on it as I observed Luis Aroche and other NFs supervising their minions of NS who got off on sureños, including one incident where they stabbed 3 sureños at yard recall right underneath the yard central gunner. More on those war stories in my book. I also noticed that the Fresneros were very divided. The majority who had transferred in from San Quentin, including members of the original Bulldog Council, were very much against taking any direction from the NF. But there was a smaller group led by a guy called Rooster who remained Fresnortes. The Bulldogs ended up taking CR from the NF-NS around the end of 1989 to the first part of 1990. I also wrote the main report on that one, as well as gave Folsom Gang Unit Donna de la Garza intel I confiscated from Bulldogs. I am still good friends with her and believe she is a really good person. Thanks, Donna, for keeping it real and for staying humble. By the mid-1990s, the NR were expanding rapidly, some say too much, and that there was a lack of discipline, and that many of them started to operate in their own cars on their own outside of NF authority. In March 1997, a well-known Nuestra Raza member, Salvador Littleman Castaneda, CDC number D37523, was killed in Castroville and dumped in an artichoke field just one day after his release from San Quentin prison. His body had his fingers left in the 1-4 position. Word is he refused to hit his brother, who was a dropout, as well as scoffed at killing a local anti-gang counselor. Now, there are some that claim the killers didn't put his hands that way, but as you can see in this photo, somebody clearly did. Either the shooter did, or somebody else came by later and did, which would be pretty dumb, or the cops did, which also would be pretty dumb, to mess with a major crime scene and possibly blow a major case. 1997 was also the year that the NF disbanded the Nuestra Raza, but really they didn't. What they did is they reworded it. No longer was the wording hermanos or bros used. They used ensols or ensoldados, who were supposed to swear allegiance to the NF or risk being killed. So to people who say that the Nuestra Raza was disbanded in 1997, so the bonds no longer apply, I disagree, as have several other people on other channels. So even though there was no more official NR after the 1997 NF directive or filter came out, NSOL/Norteño bylaws still apply. These new NSOL bonds solidify together and holds the Norteño collective accountable via discipline and awareness inside jails and pintas, via household policies and stated rights. For instance, you are supposed to get due process. In other words, an investigation is supposed to be conducted before you're subject to a removal, which is basically subject to assault, a pegada, often being stabbed, possibly being killed, depending on how bad the violation was. The bonds apply where there is a recognized NF carnal in the yard, but it does not give any NSOL authority to operate on their own out on the street, like the NS/NR NR did on the street in different cars prior to their disbandment. Now, I should state here, there were also quite a few NR that were upset at the NF laying down the law that they could no longer function, and many of them decided to split off as Northern Riders or as New Flowers, which were former NF members or associates. You can see my dropout video for more on those groups. But now let me get into the XIV bonds, all 14 of them. And I'm reading from the original one. Like I said, it's been reformatted several times. But this version, which was disseminated out to the CDC yards and jails post-1984, number 1, all hermanos, brothers, will strive for better education, respect, and social status of equality. This includes and goes beyond acquiring all incentives and privileges entitled to a convict. Number 2, all hermanos will do all within their reach and capability to acquire mainline status for those who are the grounds in which we must secure in order for our fellow hermanos and all those who live for a cause to have a strong established pinta, which means prison, to go through without the interference of the opposition, which usually means La M and Sureños, but also can be other groups like the Aryan Brotherhood and other white convict gangs. All hermanos will take a strong positive stance towards aiding those of Latin descent, as well as any other minority groups worthy of our cause, such as the Black Guerrilla family and Black gangs, in need of our guidance and assistance and or moral support. It is our sole duty to walk together in harmony, to unite with these forces in alliance with us in order to reach our own set of goals. Bonds number 4 reads, in order to continue in our struggle, far less obstacles, there will be no tolerance created by internal confrontation, individualism, or homeboy favoritism. At no time will a hermano spread false rumor about a fellow hermano, nor will a hermano attempt to take advantage of or disrespect another hermano's ruca, which means girlfriend or wife, or their familia, which is her family. To do so would result in serious repercussions. Bond number 5, all hermanos will acknowledge and respect the authority in charge. At no time will an hermano feel inferior towards one holding rank or position, nor will an hermano holding rank or position of some type feel suppressed towards a fellow hermano because of his position. Bonds number 6, any and all info and data concerning new arrivals will be repeated through his proper channels, especially that which endangers the life of a fellow hermano or is contrary to the cause. At no time will a hermano endanger the life of a fellow hermano, nor have any type of dealing with the canines, which are law enforcement officers, or enemy be tolerated. To do so will be considered an act of treason. Now, I have to interject here. Most of the NSNR I talked to would converse with me and cooperate with me for the most part. I think what they're talking about is giving the canines information or anything out of the ordinary things that were expected in order to program on a yard and in the units. Bonds number 8. Should a hermano transfer from one facility to another, it is his sole duty to establish a branch and union, all set procedures. Henceforth, he is to work hand in hand with other hermanos in said facility and continue to work parallel to other pintas. Bonds number 9. At no time will a hermano boast or lie about his status, be he rank or file. All hermanos will be held in high regard for his physical and mental well-being. Bonds number 10. All hermanos will keep track of all enemies and activities behind enemy lines. Bonds number 11. It is the responsibility of all hermanos, aware of our cause, to teach and school all those destined to the pinta. At no time should one enter the pinta blind or without knowledge of our struggle behind the walls. Bonds number 12. All hermanos will defend each and every household to the fullest, no matter the consequences or circumstance. This means standing next to La Causa and hermanos in the time of battle or struggle. To abandon such responsibility will be treated as an act of cowardice and desertion. Bonds number 13. It is highly encouraged that all hermanos paroling to the streets make an effort to assist his fellow hermanos behind the walls in any form or fashion he may choose. This is not mandatory, but is a further step towards the elite circle of dedicated soldados. Like I said, note that changes were made to that particular bond. They're no longer allowed to function out on the street as a separate entity. All hermanos will stay abreast of all new rules, laws, policies, and procedures. At no time will any portion of this format be changed, abused, or used for one's own personal gain. To do so would be considered an act of treason. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned something new. We are now getting to the moment that many of you have been waiting for, a West Familiar roll call over the past almost 60 years, A through Z. I hope that you enjoy it as much as many of you did with the previous Mexican Mafia A through Z series. For now, this is Gabe Morales signing off for Gangsters, Cops, and Politicians. If I go forward, follow me. If I hesitate, push me. If they, I may kill me, avenge me. If I am a traitor, kill me.
Gangsters, cops, and politicians, get ready to rock. On a mission, each one of us shares our own vision.